Disclaimer: this story explores mature emotional themes, including complicated family dynamics and personal boundaries. It does not contain explicit material. Viewer discretion is advised. There's a moment in every adult's life when you realize your world isn't as neat and categorized as you thought it was. Mine came on a Thursday afternoon over coffee I didn't finish and a glance I wasn't supposed to notice. 3 years ago, I married James. Stable, charming, older than me by 12 years, and very much the provider type. He gave me what I thought I needed: structure, security, and a way out of the chaos my 20s had been. We met at a conference, bonded over mutual exhaustion and a shared disdain for networking, and 6 months later, I moved into his quiet suburban home. It was everything I said I wanted: peaceful, predictable, comfortable. Then his son came home. Ethan, 26. Graduate student, musician, sarcastic, tall. From James's first marriage. He'd been living on the other side of the country, but had taken a semester off to get his head right after a breakup, and James invited him to stay with us for a while. I didn't object. I didn't expect anything to happen beyond polite dinners and passing conversations. But Ethan was attentive, observant in a way James never was. He'd ask questions like he actually cared about the answers. He remembered things: my favorite wine, the way I twirled my hair when I was thinking, the fact that I hated being called babe. At first, it was flattering in that harmless way people notice details when they're being friendly. But over time, it turned into something heavier. Something I could feel in the silence between our sentences. One evening, James left early for a work trip, and the house felt strangely still. I found myself in the kitchen, trying to open a jar, muttering curse words under my breath. Ethan walked in, barefoot, shirt slightly wrinkled, holding a mug of tea like he owned the place. He took the jar from my hand without saying anything and opened it in one twist. Then he said it, casually, like we were talking about the weather: "I know what you need." I froze. My hands still on the counter, heartbeat thudding a little too fast. There was something in the way he said it: quiet, confident, a little sad. I didn't ask what he meant. Not then. Because part of me already knew. He wasn't talking about the jar. He was talking about the long, tired sighs I exhaled when no one was watching. The way I lit up when someone actually listened. The quiet resentment I tried to hide every time James interrupted me mid-sentence, thinking he already knew what I was going to say. I looked at Ethan, really looked at him. And for a moment too long, neither of us moved. He stepped back, gave a soft smile, and said, "Sorry. That came out weird." Then he left the room. And now I can't stop thinking about what he meant. Or how much he might actually be right. I couldn't stop replaying that moment. The jar, the words, his tone. "I know what you need." He said it like a truth I hadn't dared admit to myself. For days, I avoided being alone with Ethan. Not because I was afraid of him, but because I wasn't sure what part of me he had seen so clearly. And maybe I was afraid of what that meant. I busied myself with errands, dinners with friends, even signed up for a yoga class I knew I'd quit in a week. Meanwhile, James kept being James, predictable, checked out, buried in meetings and phone calls, and the quiet kind of neglect that slowly numbs you. Ethan noticed. Of course he did. He started staying up late in the living room, reading or sketching in his notebook, music playing low from his headphones. I'd catch glimpses of him out of the corner of my eye, and it always gave me that same twist in my stomach. The same feeling you get when someone you shouldn't want looks at you like they see you. It wasn't physical, not yet. But the air between us was charged. Like we were both waiting for the other to make a move neither of us had decided on. One night, I came home late from a friend's birthday. James had gone to bed. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of jazz coming from the kitchen. Ethan was at the counter, slicing peaches. He looked up, smiled, and said, "You're always glowing when you've been drinking wine with people who talk too loud." I laughed despite myself. That obvious? He shrugged, casually. Just observant. You deserve that kind of energy more often. I didn't respond. I just watched him, and he didn't look away. There was a weight in that silence, thick with everything we weren't saying. I used to think I was imagining it, he said, still looking at me. But I'm not, am I? My breath caught. Imagining what? That you're not happy. His voice was calm, not confrontational. With him. With all of this. I wanted to deny it. Say he was wrong. Say I was just tired or stressed or overwhelmed. But the lie wouldn't come. Because some part of me wasn't happy, and it had been there long before Ethan walked into my life. I turned toward the hallway. You shouldn't say things like that. He nodded slowly, not defensive, just thoughtful. I know. But I think you needed to hear it. I didn't sleep that night. Because the worst part wasn't that he saw through me, it was how much I wanted to let him. The next morning, James made pancakes. He always did that after a business trip, his way of resetting the household. He didn't notice how I flinched when Ethan walked into the kitchen or how quickly I excused myself after coffee. If he did, he didn't ask. That was our rhythm. Pretend, ignore, repeat. But something had shifted, and pretending didn't come as easily now. Ethan had started applying for jobs in the area. He hadn't mentioned moving out. Every time I passed his room, I felt a tug, guilt, curiosity, something else I didn't want to name. I began sleeping with the door locked, not because I thought anything would happen, but because I didn't trust what might if I let the moment get too quiet. And then came the dinner. James invited an old college friend over, and we all played the happy host roles. Wine flowed, conversations circled around real estate and politics, and nothing that mattered. Ethan sat across from me, quietly observant. Halfway through the night, I felt his eyes on me. Not in a provocative way, just a reminder. That he was there. That he knew. I excused myself to the kitchen to refill the wine, needing air. He followed. I didn't turn around when he spoke. He doesn't see you. I'm fine, I said quickly. You're not. I turned to face him. Ethan, you have to stop. He didn't move closer, didn't raise his voice. Why? Because I said what you won't. Because this is not okay. I sounded angrier than I meant to. You're his son. You're not his anything anymore, he said quietly. You're someone he stopped choosing a long time ago. My heart pounded in my ears. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Because Ethan was saying the things I'd buried so deep, I'd started convincing myself they weren't real. Then James walked in. He was laughing, holding a plate of dessert. He didn't notice how tense we were, didn't see how quickly Ethan stepped back. He kissed my cheek, distracted, and handed me a fork like none of it mattered. Later that night, I stood at the sink washing dishes while James dozed in the living room. Ethan walked past me but didn't stop. He just said, low enough for me to barely hear it, one of us sees you. The other just lives with you. And just like that, he was gone. That night, I stood outside his door for a long time before walking away. The tension had become impossible to ignore. Every interaction was charged, every silence loaded with the weight of what hadn't been said and couldn't be unsaid. The walls felt thinner. The air felt heavier. And then James announced the weekend trip. A little retreat, he called it. Just the two of us. You and me. No phones, no distractions. We need this. He smiled like it was a solution, not a last-ditch effort. I nodded. I even forced a smile. But my stomach twisted. Not from guilt, something worse. Dread. Because I knew something had already cracked between us and no weekend away could fix it. The night before we were supposed to leave, I stayed up late packing. James had already gone to bed. I was folding clothes with robotic precision when I heard a knock, quiet, hesitant. Ethan stood in the doorway. You're leaving tomorrow, he said, as if I didn't know. I stayed silent. My hands trembled slightly as I zipped the suitcase. He stepped into the room. Don't go. Ethan, I mean it. Don't go just to pretend this marriage still works. Don't go just to make him feel better about how much he's let you slip away. I turned to him. This isn't your place. He stepped closer, more serious than I'd ever seen him. You want to stay? You want to stop lying to yourself. I see it. I feel it. My voice cracked. Do you have any idea what you're asking me to do? I'm asking you to be honest. With him. With me. With yourself. I shook my head, but my breath hitched. I can't destroy everything just because I'm confused. His voice softened. You're not confused. You're scared. And I get it. But don't walk away from something real just because it came from the wrong direction. There was silence. Raw. Exposed. Then we heard it. James's voice. Low. From the hallway. I figured it out 2 weeks ago. We froze. He stepped into the room slowly. His eyes weren't wide with shock, they were tired. Resigned. He looked at me, then at Ethan, then back. I hoped I was wrong. That it was just in my head. But I knew. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I didn't want to see it, he continued. But now I do. Clear as day. The suitcase on the bed felt like a loaded weapon. No one moved. I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to throw anything. I just want one of you to tell me the truth. I looked at Ethan. He didn't look away. James didn't shout. He didn't ask questions. He just stood there, watching us like a man who had been holding his breath for too long. I want the truth, he repeated. The silence that followed was unbearable. I wanted to speak, to explain that nothing physical had happened, that everything was still just on the edge of something, but the words wouldn't come. So Ethan spoke. We haven't done anything. But yes, there's something between us. I looked at him, stunned. Not because he told the truth, but because of what he said next. She didn't pursue it. I did. James's expression didn't change, but I could feel the weight of it in the air, something cracking beneath the surface. He turned to me. Is that true? I nodded, slowly. It wasn't supposed to be anything. I didn't ask for it. James looked down. That's the thing, though. I think I always knew you'd end up needing more than I could give. It almost sounded like guilt. But then came the twist. He looked at Ethan. And you think I didn't notice what you were doing? He pulled out his phone and tossed it onto the bed. I saw the texts. The ones you sent your mom. Ethan's face went pale. What? I asked, confused. James didn't take his eyes off his son. Go ahead. Tell her the part you left out. Ethan opened his mouth, but said nothing. What texts? I asked again. James picked up the phone, opened a message, and handed it to me. I read the screen, each word landing like a punch to the chest. She's not happy. You were right. I'll get her to leave him. She deserves better. The date was from over a month ago. I stared at Ethan. You told your mother about this? He looked panicked now. It's not what it looks like. She and I were talking. She's always hated that you married my dad, and she put that idea in my head. You were planning this? I asked, my voice cracking. This wasn't some accidental connection, you engineered it? No, he said quickly. At first I didn't think anything would happen. But then I saw how you looked at me, how miserable you were. I didn't lie about that. James stepped back, folding his arms. This wasn't a romance. It was revenge. I stared at both of them. The man I married. The man who saw through me. The man who may have manipulated me. Everything I thought I understood about what we had, what it meant, was now poisoned with doubt. I walked out of the room. Not because I had answers, but because I couldn't breathe in there anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding through every second. The house felt colder. Not because the temperature dropped, but because everything that had been simmering under the surface had finally boiled over. By morning, James had already left. He took an overnight bag and a single sentence with him: "You'll figure it out. Or you won't. Either way, I'm done waiting." He didn't yell. He didn't beg. He just walked away. That was the worst part. Ethan was still here. But we hadn't spoken since the night before. When I came into the kitchen, he was sitting at the table, head in his hands, a coffee mug untouched beside him. I didn't mean for it to happen like that, he said quietly. Yeah, I replied, but it did. He looked up. I didn't lie to you. Not about what I felt. But I did let it get twisted. I let her get in my head. You planned it, Ethan. At first, maybe. But I fell for you anyway. His voice cracked, and it stopped being about her or him. It became about you. I didn't speak. I just sat across from him. I was angry at my dad for years, he continued. For leaving her, for being distant, for putting himself first. And then you showed up. And suddenly he was, smiling. Alive. I thought it wasn't fair. I shook my head slowly. I don't know what hurts more, that I believed we had something real, or that maybe we still do, and it came from something so ugly. He reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. You get to decide what this is. Not him. Not my mom. Not me. You. I looked at our hands. You made me feel seen. And that's something I hadn't felt in a long time. But I need time. Alone. Not torn between two men. Not trying to rebuild something that started with damage. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. If that's what you need, I'll go. I nodded too. It is. He stood slowly, quietly, as if he didn't want to disturb the weight of the moment. As the front door closed behind him, I stood in the middle of the living room, silent, still, shattered, but not broken. For the first time in a long time, I didn't belong to someone else's expectations. I belonged to myself. It's been 6 months. The house is quiet now. James never came back, and I didn't ask him to. We signed the papers without much drama. No begging, no fights, just two people who finally admitted they were better apart than stuck in a loop of polite emptiness. Ethan left that morning like he said he would. He moved out, got a job across the city. No calls. No texts. Just space, exactly what I asked for. And I needed it. I needed to figure out who I was without someone constantly reflecting their version of me back at me. No husband. No step anything. Just me. I started small, new job, new haircut, therapy every Thursday. I learned how to sit with silence, and I stopped trying to fix the past. But healing isn't neat. There were nights I missed James, not the man, but the routine. The way it all used to feel safe. And there were moments I missed Ethan, too, but that ache was different. It came with questions. What if it had started differently? What if it hadn't been laced with guilt and cross lines? The truth is, not every connection is meant to last. Some come into your life to shake the dust off, to wake you up. One evening, months later, I ran into Ethan at a bookstore. Total accident. We made eye contact across a shelf, both of us pausing like we were in a scene from a movie. And then we laughed. Not awkwardly, just like two people who had lived through something complicated and survived it. We grabbed coffee. Talked like old friends. He told me he'd started writing music again. I told him I'd finally stopped apologizing for wanting more out of life. He didn't ask to come back. And I didn't ask him to try. There was still something between us, but this time, it didn't feel like a secret. It felt like history. Honest. Whole. Closed. And that was enough. Sometimes, the people who break the silence in your life aren't meant to stay forever. Sometimes, they're just there to remind you that you're allowed to want more. That you're allowed to feel. And that's not shameful. That's human. I'm not sure what love looks like for me going forward, but now I know I won't settle. I won't shrink. I won't pretend. Because someone once said, I know what you need. But now I do, too. Did you enjoy this story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Let me know in the comments. I read everyone.